And welcome to Writing Wednesday. I'm Coach Brenda Haire, and I'm happy to be here today with tips on handling feedback. Feedback will come from at least 12 different people groups we will discuss today, and you need to know how to handle it, right? As writers, we get it from the time we very first start telling people about our books all the way through till you've published 10 of them, right? People are going to give you feedback, good, bad, and ugly. You will get it all. So let's talk about some feedback and how to handle it. I'm going to give you 3 tips on handling it, and we're going to talk about the 12 different people groups. So if you're a note taker and you want to take notes, now's the time to grab your pen. I'm going to run through these 12 people groups. If you're not on my email list and you want to be, head over to brendahaire.com or publishandtell.com and get on my email list, and you will get an email every week when this pops up, and that way you'll get the 12 tips. So if you're watching live already and you have the 12 tips in your email, just let me know. Have them, or the 12 people groups. If you don't have those, get ready to take notes, okay? Again, if you're not on my email list, hop over there on publishandtell.com or brendahaire.com and get on my email list, and you will be able to get these emails and get some of the information ahead of time and not have to take so many notes, right? Because you'll have some of the information. So the 12 people groups are in the email. The 3 tips are not. So here we go. If you're watching live, did you get the email or not? Let me know. Yes, no. Here we go with the people groups if you're taking notes, okay? These are the 12 people groups that will give you feedback, whether you ask for it or not in some cases. Okay, so first is family, right? Family will gladly give you feedback. And the thing to watch out for with family is they're probably not your ideal reader, okay? Just because mom loves you doesn't mean she's your ideal reader. Maybe mom doesn't love you, and so she's probably not your ideal reader there either. But you need to realize that just because your family loves and supports you does not mean they're your ideal reader, and the feedback that they give you, you need to take it with that in mind, okay? They're great at proofreading and things like that, but they're not necessarily your ideal reader. And so they're not going to absorb the information the same way. They're not going to look at the book the same way. They may come at with emotionally, just at it emotionally or different. So just be aware of that, okay? Same with friends. We have those well-meaning friends that want to support us and, hey, I'll be happy to beta read your book for you, or I'll be happy to edit it, or I'll be happy to whatever. And they may or may not. Oh, Kim, that's surprising. You should get the email for sure. Check your spam folder and let me know. And if not, I'll go back in my system later and make sure that it's updated. You should be getting one every week. It comes in the morning on Wednesday morning, just a reminder with the link for today. So, yeah, I'll double check because I know you're on my email list, obviously, because you're one of my clients, you're in our membership. And so I want to make sure that you're getting it. Yes, Yvonne says she got it. Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about friends. Again, a well-meaning group of people, right? They want to support you. They want to cheer you on, for the most part. Most of them do. But when they offer to beta read your book or give you feedback, again, you need to take it with a grain of salt. Are they your ideal reader? Is this book intended for them as an audience, their age group, their lifestyles, their habits, whatever, right? If I was to take, let's just say I was to take Yvonne's book, okay? Yvonne's book coming out is called Spiritual Oasis. I'm so excited about this book. It's in editing now. Yay, Yvonne, congratulations. I was to take her book and give it to, let's say, my dad. Okay, first of all, my dad lives in a tiny house on the lake. He doesn't have a lot of space in his home. He's not a woman. He's not interested in doing this type of thing. Now, does he need a prayer room? Yes, he needs a prayer room. Does he need space to pray and spend time with God? Absolutely. But is he her ideal reader? No, he's not. So if he was her friend, which I want to say they met at the beach retreat, if he was her friend, he could certainly give her some feedback. Now, she could take it with a grain of salt, right? Is it really, really, he's not the ideal person for that book. He's just not. So you just need to make sure that who you're giving it to matters, okay? And it's good to give it to all types of people because they're going to see things differently. You just need to remember that when you're getting the feedback back from them. Okay, I'm going to catch up with some comments. So thank you for being here, Yvonne, Laura, Kim. Let's see. Kim says she got the email. Friends, the good, the bad. Oh, yes, the good, the bad. Um, all right, Kim got the email. Yep, Laura, I got the email, but it was just the link for this. It should be the link, and it should have 12. It should have had 12 things ahead of it in the email. I had a friend offer to read my first manuscript before I sent it off to editing. I was surprised when she read it and said it was good, but she wasn't my ideal reader. I hadn't thought about it, but I guess ideally not everyone will want the content we have. So like you have said before, have your ideal reader in mind when you write, and write to them. Yes. And when you get the feedback, right? When you're, and it's fine to send it out to people who may not be your ideal. Obviously, if someone wants to give you feedback, we don't want to be like, I don't want your opinion. I don't want your feedback. Like, that's ugly too, right? So we want to be like, sure, I'd be happy to. Of course, if it's somebody who you want to give this to and they're not just after a free book, right? Because there's people out there like that too. So we want to make sure that they're doing it with good intentions. So you want to get all the feedback you can, but just remember, there may not be an ideal reader. Um, I remember giving my book to someone one time and they caught an edit that it was like a brand name or something, and I had misspelled or mispronounced or something. I can't remember exactly, but I wouldn't have caught it. And I was like, oh, wow, that was helpful, right? And so you never know what's going to come from those ideal. There were no 12 things listed. Interesting. Okay, did Yvonne, Kim, did y'all get the 12 things listed? That's so interesting to me. Okay, when I'm done giving you them all, I will drop the list of them all here in the comments as well. Okay, next up is your book coach. You can get feedback from your book coach. In this case, I'm your book coach. If you're not working with me and you're watching this, well, guess what? I am probably your book coach for the time being, right? Because you're using this information to coach you along. Now, if you're working with me, obviously I'm your book coach and I want to help you in every way possible. I love that we communicate inside of our private coaching community. I get emails from you guys with different parts of your manuscript to review and coach you on. And the biggest thing is, and I have asked if I don't know, right? I need to know the premise. I need to know what your point of the book is so that I can give you feedback accordingly, right? Because as a book coach, if you were to tell me your book is about, like we did it, I can't remember if it was on our coaching call live last week or on this, or we were live, but whether it was public or in our private group last week. But I was coaching Laura. I think it was private. We were coaching on in our private group about her titles for her poetry books and her mission statements. And I was like, I'm gonna need those titles again because I couldn't remember them. And I want to coach in the premise of what's happening, right? I don't want to just be like, well, and give some general statement. I want to coach specifically for those books. And you'll see me do that here live when my clients pop on. You'll know that they're my clients usually because I'm referencing their books and talking about their books because first of all I want to help them, and it gives great examples for people who may not have books ready yet or have a coach that they're working with. So it gives good examples. But I need to know the premise so that I can properly coach you. And then I'll ask you questions like, who's your ideal audience? Who is this book specifically for? How are they going to carry this book around with them, whether you need a paperback or a hardback, right? We're going to ask questions like that. In fact, Yvonne had asked a question about distribution recently and wanted to know other distributors to use besides KDP, and that matters if you want your book in different places. And so talking that through with a book coach is helpful, but I need to understand what the premise is and the concept in order to give you the right feedback, right? So getting feedback is important, again, from a coach, but you have to understand they have to be asking the right questions and understand what it is you're trying to do. It's the same reason why you shouldn't just work with any coach out there. And I've rescued a few authors in the past, and it breaks my heart to see what kind of shoddy work that they're getting from other people, but it's because they're getting blanketed work, right? They're getting things that are, it's like, here's the stamp next, here's the stamp next, right? They're not getting their book really looked at, their overall arching project experience, like what they're trying to build for their business. That's not being taken into account, right? And so, for instance, everybody's like, oh, you should put a speaker ad in the back of your book. You should put a speaker ad. Well, not if you don't want to be a speaker. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, here's Jovi. She's very dirty. She's been digging in the backyard, so say hi to Jovi. I have a tip for stop digging. It's not a very nice tip, but it works. If you put their own poop in the hole that they're digging, they'll stop digging. But she has, look at her, she's orange, she's filthy. She's filthy. Our dirt here in East Texas is orange, by the way. So, anyway, okay, coaches. So work with a coach, a good qualified coach if you can find one. If you can't find one, you're looking at one. And if you want to work with me, the details are in the link. It should be publishandtell.com. Okay, let's move on to the next kind of person that will give you feedback. I got the email with the link to watch, but I do not remember seeing a separate link. There shouldn't be a separate link for the 12. It should have just been 12 things listed in the email. I got the email, and it was done right with the 12 things listed. Yeah, poop in the hole does work. It's gross, but yeah, it does. It works. It works, right? It does work. My husband thinks I'm crazy, but it works. Unfortunately, she just goes and starts a new hole somewhere else. Okay. The next group of people, so if you're following along, family, friends, book coach, beta readers. And we've talked about this before, but beta readers. So what is a beta reader? Beta reader basically is the first person to read your manuscript from cover to cover. They usually read it after self-editing, before major edits happen, which is, they need to know that, and it can sometimes be difficult. Like, I do not like beta reading because I cannot stop editing while I'm beta reading, and it's just, to me, it's a waste of my time because I cannot read unedited work. It hurts. It hurts my heart. And which is why I teach people to to professionally self-publish, which means hire an editor. But beta readers usually get a kind of a raw copy. And I'm sorry for my beta readers who have read some of the raw stuff I've created, right? Because it can be pretty icky sometimes, but that's why we self-edit. So we self-edit first, then we get it into our beta readers' hands so that it's at least a little cleaned up, right? At least a little bit. And then we send it to our beta readers. Now, beta readers we're looking for people who are in our ideal audience. Who are they? Where do you find them? Oh, this is a whole nother teaching, right? But you want to make sure that they're your ideal reader. Don't just let anybody and everybody beta read your book, and do not start sending it out to some of these online people who you've never met before that are like, yes, I beta read books for a living or whatever, and you should never have to pay a beta reader. This is like, it's a whole scam thing out there in the world, and it's bad. So don't just send it to anyone. Make sure that you're vetting people. Who are they? You know people in your ideal audience, and if you don't, ask your friends, right? Ask some people that you know. Hey, do you know anyone who is blah, 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 right? Who maybe is a Christian woman who's struggling with their faith that would like to read a book on the subject? I'm looking for some beta readers. Do you know anybody who would like to set up a prayer room in their home and would like to just beta read my book on the subject? Yes, I do. And that's me. I would like to read that book, right? And so you could totally find beta readers like that, okay? It's really that simple. Same with you, Laura, poetry books, right? Do you know anyone who enjoys poetry? Go to art festivals, meet people in person. That way you know you're not being scammed by somebody on the internet, right? Don't be afraid to go to the library. Ask the librarian if they know anyone. They probably know people who check out poetry books on a regular basis. Like, talk to people. Get involved in different book groups in your community so that you can find quality beta readers that fit your target audience, okay? All right, we're going to pause. That's 4. We're going to pause there, and we're going to talk about tip number 1 on handling some of this feedback, okay? And this is important through all 12 of the people, but I want to give some tips out here. So tip number 1 is to separate the emotion, right? Because it can be emotional, especially when we're handing over our babies into the world, from constructive criticism. Do not take it personally. Use this information on, consider the source, digest the information, and say, okay, is this really something I need to change? How will this affect my reader? How will this affect the rest of the book? Those types of things, right? So really separating it out, separating the emotion. And it can be hard sometimes, especially when it's family and friends, and sometimes a very direct book coach that will not sugarcoat things, right? I don't sugarcoat. Like, I'm just going to tell you how it is. Like, we're here to coach. You're not paying me to be your friend, although I'm friends with most of my clients. You're not paying me to sugarcoat. You're paying me to coach you through this process and get a book in your hands. That's what you're paying me for. So I'm not going to dance around and be like, oh, you should really consider blah, 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 and, but no, do it. Let's do it, right? Kim knows, she's been working with me probably the longest from the people who are on right now, and she knows. Dawn's been with me even longer. I don't know if Dawn's on right now, but Dawn's been here even longer. She knows. I don't sugarcoat. I just tell you how it's going to be. You're here. You're paying me to coach you, not to be your bestie. While I hope I can be your bestie and cheer you on for life with your book, long after the coaching is over, that's not what you're paying me for, right? Okay, let's see. Kim says she looked. My husband was beta reader. Oh, awesome. And he's a good beta reader, right? Because he is your target audience. He's someone who's setting up these prayer experiences. Awesome. I appreciate your, oh, thank you. Thank you, Kim. Thank you. It's one of those things that people either love or hate about me. And I've been told before, like, you should rein it in and no, this is who I am. This is who God created me to be. My name in Hebrew actually means sword, which is a sharp, direct object, right? And so I'm not going to sugarcoat. I'm not going to soften it. I'm a coach. I'm not, you're paying me to coach you, right? Okay. So that's tip number 1. Let's get back into the kinds of people here, okay? So the next type of person who's going to give you feedback is an editor. An editor, this is actually, I say one kind, editor, but you're talking about developmental editors, line editors, copy editors, proofreaders. Depends on what type of editor you're looking for. You're going to work with a bulk, a group of people, right? It may be the same person. It may not be the same person. For each part of your book, depending on what you're shooting for your book, those kind of things. But here's the thing. You need to take their feedback. You need to listen to what they're saying if you work with a vetted, proven editor. If you're not working with a vetted, proven editor, for example, one time I sent my book to a friend who said, oh, I'll be happy to edit your book. I love doing that. And she was anti-Oxford comma. Okay, I'm team Oxford. And so is Chicago Manual Style for the most part. Well, it is. Chicago Manual Style is. It's not for the most part. It's a style. And they believe in Oxford commas. And so if you're not familiar with Oxford comma, go Google it. But you should be using it in your books. She was not that way. So she went and corrected all my Oxfords to not be there. And then I had to go back and redo all the work. So everything that I believed about commas, she undid basically. And I was like, oh. Again, this is why you work with proven, vetted editors in your area who edit your types of books, all of that. So for instance, I have a fantastic editor that does most of my work, most of my clients' work. Well, she does all mine, most of my clients. But I also have, for Laura, for example, I have a poetry editor who edits poetry. That's important because poetry is phrased differently, different lines, different things. And it's important to know they need to know what they're looking for. The same with working with a Christian editor. They need to know what they're looking for. I have a new editor that I found recently and vetted that I'm excited about sending work to when the time comes, if the time comes, because you've got to vet them. You have to know if they're good or not, right? And if you don't know, don't use them because it's going to cost you more in the long run. Excuse me. And it's not just about commas, right? It's about when they start telling you, oh, this word is to this or that word is to that. You need to be working with somebody who understands who your ideal reader is. They need to understand, and that's something you could potentially even send them on the front end. Now, Yvonne, you're in good hands. Dara knows what your book is about and who it's for. I usually, when I introduce people to my editors, I usually give them a little introduction to what they're about to edit, especially because it's up to them if they want to take the work or not, right? And so I usually tell them about how long the book is, what the book's about, who the ideal reader is, so that they can decide if they want to edit it or not. You should be doing the same when you're working with editors outside of me. If you're working with someone outside of me, make sure that you're conveying those things. If you're not, and you're starting, for instance, if your book is a Christian book and you want to capitalize the pronouns of God, him, your, those things. If you're not working with a vetted Christian editor, they're not going to know that. If you're not letting them know on the front end, and they're going to start changing all those things. So you've got to know what kind of editors you're working with. I met a young girl who edits primarily like sci-fi horror type stuff. complete opposite of what I write. And so I was like, great to have you on my list of vetted editors. If I come across an author who wants to publish that type of book, I'll be happy to refer them to you, which I'm sure my other editors would appreciate because that's not what they edit, right? So sorting out all of that is important, and taking their feedback, knowing they know what the purpose of the book is so, so important. Okay. Number 6, if you're keeping track, number 6 is critics. Okay, you're going to get it from critics. Now, when I say critics, this also ties into, I skipped down. It ties to one further down the list, but there's different types of critics, right? So you could have people who just review books, which ties into book reviewers, which is also on the list. You have internet trolls, which is also on the list. So critics, really, it just depends on the situation, right? Who's going to be critiquing your book or not. So if you, maybe there's a contest that you enter for it through your local newspaper, through a local magazine, through something like that, there's going to be critics, and they may or may not give you feedback. You need to take that again. Do they understand who your ideal reader is? What's their background? What's their experience, right? Even understanding the difference between working with somebody who primarily works with fiction books versus working with someone who understands nonfiction books, completely different mindsets, right? That's why I'm struggling so much to try to write a fiction book, because I have 10 published nonfiction books. It's so much easier for me to write and read nonfiction than to get into fiction. And it's amazing when you start talking about the difference with people, they usually don't even know the difference. What is fiction, what is nonfiction? I'll have conversations with people and I'll say, oh, do you write fiction or nonfiction? And they just look at me with this deer in the headlights look, and I'm like, is your book made up or is it real? like they don't understand. And so you've got to have somebody who does understand the difference if you're looking, for any feedback. But from critics, they should know, but you need to make sure that they are a critic that specializes in your genre, or at least your overarching fiction or nonfiction. So if you're entering a fiction contest and you're putting your fiction book in there, they should be fiction critics reviewing that. If you're entering an overarching contest, the people critiquing them may not be nonfiction readers. They may be fiction specialists, and they may not understand the cover or the design or whatever they're giving you feedback on. So just be aware of those things, okay? And take all of it with a grain of salt. Bookstores, okay, next on the list. So that was number 6, critics. Number 7 and 8 are bookstores and libraries. They will give you feedback, usually, if you ask for it. But again, when asking for it, who are you asking? Why are you asking? All of the things, right? So when you ask for feedback in these places, bookstores or libraries, make sure that you're asking somebody who has experience in your genre again, right? The little clerk working there, or even the manager, just because they manage a bookstore doesn't mean that they necessarily like reading your genre or that they get it, right? Just because they shelve those books every single day doesn't mean they understand it or they get it. So again, asking for feedback is important, but the kinds of feedback you would ask there are probably more generalized questions like, what do you see the most people checking out of the library? Like, what kinds of books do people check out? How long do they usually keep these types of books? Or if you're at the bookstore, what covers do you think appeal to people? Or, asking general feedback like that. If you're taking your book in there and saying, do you think this book would appeal to a reader? Again, do they know your target audience? Do they know, that's a very subjective question. And so taking your book in there and taking it to the genre that it fits in and comparing it to that is probably a better exercise rather than just walking up to a clerk and trying to get some feedback. Probably not going to be the kind of feedback it's going to be subjective. It's personal to them. Okay, any questions, comments, complaints so far? No complaining. Okay, number 9 is internet trolls. And just so you know, they are real people and they come out of nowhere. Some of them are spammers, some of them are just people with nothing good to say. You'll have it all coming your way, unfortunately. For the most part, how you handle these people depends on what they're saying, right? So sometimes you can just block their comments. If they're giving you good feedback, you want to screen capture that so you can use it in your marketing. Again, with any of this feedback, you want to be capturing it so you can use it later in your marketing. But with internet trolls, if they're driving up your feed, and I'll give you an example. So obviously, I promote Christian lifestyle, right? And so I'll do different reels or whatever. And sometimes I'll have people come on and start trolling, and they'll just leave comment after comment about, they'll say things like, Jesus isn't real, Jesus is this, Jesus is that, and they'll just be ugly, right? And I'll just leave their comments scrolling away. I just leave them there. And then I make a comment at the bottom, that's your opinion. Sorry you feel that way. And just keep letting it happen, right? And my husband will be like, why do you let it happen? And I'm like, because he's feeding my algorithm. So the very thing that he doesn't think should be on the internet, he's giving it more traction by being a jerk. So let him be a jerk. Let him. To me, I just sit back and smile and say, thank you for feeding my algorithm. Even though you don't agree with this, now you're letting more eyeballs see it. So take that for what it's worth, right? Um, that's a good question, Laura. I'm going to have to check on that, to be honest. I don't know that I've ever asked that question to know if it's if the editor deals with specifically Christian or not only. I know it's not only Christian poetry, but if she's ever dealt with Christian poetry. So I'll have to ask her that. And maybe this new editor as well. I have to ask him where he is on poetry. So yeah, and it may be good for you to use one for one type of edit and then come back and have a different editor, especially for yours on the other side, so that for proofreading, one for editing, one for proofreading, so that you do get two different kinds of eyeballs on it. Oh, yep. Jan says she's already been contacted by 2, but know nothing about them. I've ignored their comments. Yep, ignore their comments. If they have nothing nice to say, you do not have to comment back. If they're commenting something really, really ugly, you can delete the comment. But you want to handle the feedback, right? Either it's boosting your algorithm or it makes you look like you've gone on vacation, right? If you just don't say anything at all. So sometimes I'll just come back, even if you're not addressing their comment, just come back and leave a comment below for something else. For instance, if someone comments spam or something ugly and something ugly, I can come back under and leave my own comment and say something like, isn't this intriguing? Or just leave it, right? Or just say something maybe not open-ended, not asking a question, but commenting something else so that now your comment is the newest comment. And if people see that, they're like, oh, she just posts and abandons the post. Like, you don't want that either, right? So you want to comment something, even if it's not directed to them, so that your comment is the newest comment and it shows up differently. I hope that helps. That social media thing is a whole nother ballgame, right? Okay, so that was number 9. So if you're keeping track, family, friends, book coach, beta reader, editors, critics, bookstores, libraries, internet trolls. All right, let's hop on to tip number 2 before we cover the last 3. Okay, tip number 2 is asking clarifying questions. Asking clarifying questions. Okay, sometimes somebody will give you feedback and you may not understand why they're saying that, or they'll say something and you're like, well, that's really good, but how's it going to affect this? Well, ask them. Just ask. If they've got really good feedback and you're like, well, that does make sense, but how's it going to affect this point in the story or this point in the book? Then ask them, how do you think that will affect this in the book? How do you think? Don't be afraid to push back on the feedback, right? And ask clarifying questions. Now, obviously, you don't want to get in an argument with somebody over it, especially if they're your editor. You don't want to argue with your editor. But asking clarifying questions is totally acceptable. Even with a professional editor, even with a professional book coach, if you don't understand something that I'm saying, which I can understand, first of all, how it happens, right? 1, I talk really fast. 2, I've been in the industry long enough now that the words come out of my mouth without thinking that people don't understand all the words sometimes, right? Because it's almost like publishing ease, Is that the word to use? I don't know. It's my own little language, right? I understand front matter, back matter, all these terms that people are like, huh? And I'll give you an example. I work with a gentleman in the Philippines, and when I was talking about back matter, he didn't understand what it was. He thought it meant the back of the book. It's not the back of the book, it's the back interior of the book, but he didn't know. And I assumed that he did. He did not. And so asking for clarifying questions is important, even if it's your book coach. All right, we got a question here. Speaking of questions, let's see. Okay. Yvonne says, if I change a section after it comes back from the editor, do I have to send it back to the editor? In your case, Yvonne, you're going to use the same proofreader probably as you're using, I'm assuming, as you're using for your editing. And so it's okay if you add a section and then just make note of it when you send it back for a proofread. Let them know that, hey, by the way, I added this whole section in chapter 4, paragraph 5, whatever. So that they know that's the first time that they're looking at it, and they're going to look at it a little closer than if they were just doing a proof. They're going to read it differently. So usually that's how it works. Now, if you're adding a whole another chapter or a whole huge section, you should probably halt editing, let them know that, hey, I'm making some changes, so let's pause and I'll send you an updated manuscript, or at least discuss it with them. So it depends on how much you're adding and subtracting. Now, the best thing to do is to give them one clean manuscript, get that back from them, make all the changes, suggestions that they've added, and then send it back to them for proofreading, right? Because the back and the forth is where things are going to get lost. And so if you've sent the manuscript off, which you have, if you've added anything since then, you need to know what you've added so that you can highlight it when you proofread it, when she proofreads. So you'll highlight and say, these areas are new. If you're making changes throughout, well, then that's a whole different story. You need to halt editing and send her an updated manuscript when you are finalized with it. Because going back and forth it's just too much. You have to think about the editors, right? They're not just editing your book, they're editing multiple books, and they can't keep opening a new manuscript all the time because their changes are in this particular one. You know, they're using a hard copy where they're making the changes, and so they can't keep going back and forth. It's just too much. Now, if you use Google Docs and your editor approves that and is okay with you making changes throughout, that's a different story, but that's very unlikely because editors don't work that way normally. They want to read a book from start to finish, go through it one time, fresh eyes, and then usually when they're done with their edits, they'll come back and do a second pass. So it is a lot, but you want to make sure that you give them as much polished, done stuff as possible on the first pass. Did that answer that question for you, Yvonne? All right. Yes, Laura, I do talk fast. I'm sorry. First of all, it's part of who I am. I talk fast anyway. Second of all, these are supposed to be 30 minutes long, and we're going into, it's 11:36. So lots of information in a short period of time. Good, Yvonne. I'm glad that helped you. Which is kind of my default, I think. There's so much I want to give you guys and help you with that I probably information overload you often. And so that's the beauty in the fact that you can go back and rewatch these. And so if you didn't know, you can actually go back over to the YouTube channel, Publish and Tell on YouTube, and binge watch. They're all there. After this video ends today, my VA takes it down, pops it over there, and it's there for you to replay as many times as you want. So it's a good source over on YouTube, so you can like and subscribe over there. It's a good source for you to easily watch these back. You can also go back on Facebook under events here on the Publish and Tell page and click past, and then it'll show you all the past events, and when you click on any of those, it'll pop up the videos that were played. So you have two places to rewatch. So I am aware of my faults, and talking fast is one of my faults, Yvonne. Yes. Okay, so that's good that you can go back and rewatch those at any time and take notes and all that good stuff. I'll give you a secret. So one of the ways that I learned so much about the publishing industry when I was learning is that's what I did. I just binged the content all the time. So this content, for example, I'm not showing you anything today. I'm just talking, right? So you could be listening to this from your car, while you're on the treadmill, while you're on a walk, whatever, right? And so to listen to it the first time around, great. Then the second time around, you may go listen to it somewhere else. Now, I love when you guys are live and you're commenting and we're having a conversation, but you may not always be able to do that, or you can replay it on those other things, while you're washing dishes or whatever, because you don't have to use your hands. And so that's how I learned as much as I learned, was binging the content, listening to it over and over, and finding as much content as I could. Okay, so tip number 2, asking clarifying questions. Tip number 1 was separating the emotion. Separate it, okay? And then we're going to get to tip number 3 after we cover the last 3 people who could potentially give you feedback. And now, obviously, there's a whole slew of people, right? It's not just these 12, but these are 12 different types of people groups. Okay, number 10 is your ideal reader. Now, this is the best kind of feedback you can get, because it's your person. It is the gold. It's the person, right? And if you get good gold from this person, oh my gosh, screen capture it. If they leave you an Amazon book review. Now, unfortunately, Amazon does not like us to screenshot those and use them in other places. They don't want us to do that. It's against their policy. So you can copy the information and then retype it in other places. You're not allowed, supposedly, to screenshot that. I've done it in the past. I am guilty. But if you look at their policy closely, you're not supposed to do that. The same way you're not supposed to capture rankings and show those. And I've been guilty of that in the past too. But since I've been aware of the policy, I have not done it, because as my library grows to now 10 books plus, I don't want to be kicked off of Amazon or KDP, and so I need to follow directions. And so one of the directions is not to screen capture those things to use in your marketing. So you can screen capture the review and then retype it in other places. Now, when I say retype, I really mean using text dictation to read it, right? And so unless you really just feel like retyping it, but you want to get that information. The same on Facebook. If someone, y'all have probably seen it, I've done it to y'all, where you will put in something positive about the Writer's Retreat box. You got it, you're excited, whatever, and I will screen capture that comment, and I will then use it somewhere else in marketing. It's great if you get the positive feedback in that way. If you get negative feedback in that way, you need to really consider that negative feedback. If that person, if you're saying, this is my ideal person, why did they feel that way? This is a great time to use tip number 2 and ask those clarifying questions, right? So if it's somebody you can reach out to, fantastic. If they're on Facebook, social media, whatever, and they're commenting and it's coming across negative, ask them. Ask the follow-up questions. You may ask it publicly right there if you feel like that's the appropriate place to do it, or you may message them privately and ask them, right? But you want to follow up and make sure that your ideal reader's feedback is being, first of all, they understand it's being heard. So even if it's just a thank you for leaving feedback, and that's all you want to put, at least they realize that they've been heard. That's important. And then you can follow up with them in other ways. Okay, so ideal reader, usually if you've done all the other things right, it's going to be good. It may not always, but it usually is, right? If it's not good, really listen. Okay, I did this with the Writer's Retreat box. One of my ideal clients, who is a subscriber, I asked her specifically, like, what other things would you like to see in this box? Because I wanted the feedback. I asked her, what do you like about this? Do you like that the gifts are wrapped? Do you want them unwrapped? Do you want... And I actually found out that I was doing a lot of things right, which was good. And so, but I had to be open to asking for the feedback. And I can't remember now the one negative thing she said that I was like, oh, okay, I hadn't thought of that. I can't remember what it was now, but hopefully I corrected it. If I haven't, tell me if that's you and you're watching this. Okay, number 11, this is your people groups again, is your pastor. If you're writing a Christian book, this is someone who you really want to get feedback from, and hopefully they have the time to read your book. If you do it right, it can open the door for other things. Excuse me while I take a sip here. One moment. Okay, if you do it right, so you want to ask them if they would take the time to read your book and to review it for correctness, on theologically correct, right? Does this book is there anything I say in this book that goes against what we believe? If you're at the right church, that should be all you have to say, right? Because you know their beliefs, they know your beliefs. Like, is there anything in here that I'm saying that goes against what we believe? And I usually say it, sometimes I write the way I talk, and I'm kind of, we just say things sometimes that we probably doesn't really truthfully align up with scripture. And so we need to take it back a notch and really make sure it lines up, right? And so having your pastor read it is fantastic. Maybe if it's not your pastor, it's an associate pastor at your church, but somebody hopefully that's been in ministry long enough that understands. Sometimes we say things that aren't exactly aligned, but that we want to align perfectly, right? Because we don't want to miss. This is a huge responsibility we have as authors, is to make sure that as Christian authors, make sure that our words align with scripture. And so we want to take that very seriously. So talk to your pastor, ask for feedback. What this will often do is open a door for you to speak in some realm in your church, whether that is on stage for a sermon. That's what happened for me, which was amazing. Had a pre-launch celebration party, got to speak on stage with my pastor, share the book. It was an amazing experience. That's awesome. Maybe it's to lead a Bible study in your church, and you could do that. So by offering them the book, now they know this content's out there. They can refer it to people. They can maybe offer you different opportunities within your church. So it's dual purpose asking your pastor to read it, but most importantly is to make sure that it aligns with your beliefs perfectly, because you do not want to misdirect people. Okay, it's a very big responsibility we have as Christian authors. And so don't take it lightly. Ask them, make sure that they have time to read it, make sure that they understand that you truly want feedback. You're not just looking for a pat on the back. And oftentimes asking for feedback means that you have to ask specific questions, because if we just say, hey, can you give me some feedback? People might not know what to say. But if you say, hey, do you think this book reaches this demographic, this age group, does it solve this problem? Does it, ask the specific questions to get the feedback? Okay. The last one is book reviewers. Now, book reviewers come in all shapes and sizes, right? Because they come in the form of your ideal reader, hopefully. But also, there are people out there that just review books and that they want you to pay them to do this service. I don't recommend that service, but if you go that route, just understand that they might not be your ideal reader. They're writing a book review based on how much you pay them, I guess. I don't know. I've not done this. But you want to make sure that you know who you're dealing with, right? Again, you're getting feedback. Now, I have used a service where you review books and then in exchange, people review books. I don't like it. If you go and looked on my reviews, you can probably see the ones that come from that. I shouldn't say that, because some of people I know leave very short reviews, but for the most part, people who do that exchange leave very short reviews that aren't very meaningful. And while those are still good reviews and still helpful in the review algorithm, the more they say about your book, the more helpful it's going to be to someone who's making a buying decision, and that's what reviews are for. So be mindful of this in book reviews. Don't purchase book reviews, but ask people for book reviews. And how you do that is the same way I'm about to ask you for a review. Are you ready? You just let them know, hey guys, what I do is hard work. I hope you appreciate all that I do for this community, for the Publish and Tell community, for this Writing Wednesday free here on Facebook. If you would take 5 minutes and go to the page on Publish and Tell, on the actual page under reviews, and just leave me a quick review, that would be so helpful. It not only helps my algorithm, but it helps people in making decisions and working with me. It's that easy. It's the same way, and I'm being truthful. I would love if you did that for me right now. If you went and left me a review on Publish and Tell on your experience in working with me, whether that's you're a box subscriber, a member, you're watching this for free every week, or you're a private client, or whatever your connection to me is, I would love it if you would leave me a review on Publish and Tell here. And if you're up for Google reviews, hey, go leave one of those too. You can copy and paste, leave the same review over there. If you've read any of my books, of course I would love a review on Amazon of those books. Whether you purchased it on Amazon or not, you can leave a review. So I would appreciate that as well. It's really that simple. Just ask. And in that review, let people know what it is you enjoyed about working with me, what it is you enjoyed about the book. That's all you have to ask them for, right? What did you enjoy? What was the biggest takeaway, maybe? Now, that puts a little bit more pressure on people than what did they enjoy, because people can usually all come up with that right away. But if you're really asking for some good feedback, what was the biggest takeaway is good, because that's going to give you a tangible, right? That you did that thing well. Okay. Yvonne says, what do I do with the reviews? That is a very good question. Okay. So first of all, if someone reviews your book on Amazon, like I mentioned earlier, we're not allowed to screen capture that anymore and just post it on socials, unfortunately. You'll still see people doing it, but Amazon says no, no, no. So what you could do with it is you take the text, copy it into, you'll have to retype it because you can't just copy and paste it usually. I don't know, maybe you can. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think you can copy and paste it. Copy it out, and what I do is I have a Google Doc running with all these in it, and then you can make different graphics. You can post just the text over on social and just let them know, but you want to reference the source, so you'll want to put, sometimes I'll put verified Amazon review if it's a verified purchase. Or book reviewer, put the person's name, whatever. You want to make sure you're citing the source of where the review came from, giving the reviewer the credit, but you'll use it for marketing. You'll also use it for feedback on your next book, right? Vaughn, you've got several coming. So if someone's reviewing your book and they're saying, oh, I love the way you did blah, 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 or the tangible takeaways, or I love that she gave a tip list or an example or whatever, you'll keep that in mind for next book. Okay, these people really love, okay, I need to make sure I do that in the next book. Okay. Yes, you can use their name. It becomes public domain when it's out there in the world, so you can use their name. Same with social media. The same way you guys put stuff out on socials, everything is public for me, right? So if you send it publicly, I can use it publicly. So yes, you can use their name that way. Now, if someone sends you a private message or a private email, you probably want to ask them for permission. But usually if it's a positive thing, it's usually not a problem, but you want to ask them. Okay. Did that answer your question? I hope so. Let's see where we are at. So book reviewers, we've got that done. Don't pay for reviews unless you know that they're coming from your ideal audience type of people. Even that, I wouldn't pay for reviews specifically. You don't really need to do that. Let me see. Tip number 3. Okay. So tip number 1 was to separate your emotions and handle the constructive criticism without taking it personally. Number 2 is ask clarifying questions. And number 3 is to incorporate the feedback selectively, only adopting the changes that fit and align with your vision specifically. Okay? Only adopt the changes that fit and align with your vision specifically. If you don't have a vision for your book, we talked about mission statements last week. If you don't have this for your book, if you don't have this for your author business, if you don't know where you're headed, you'll be more likely to take people's feedback and not have a clear vision, right? And this is really important when it comes to cover design. Specifically, you'll see people all the time, and I try to talk authors out of some decisions on their covers, and I'm not always successful. But for instance, I had an author not too long ago that I redesigned their series book, the first in a series. Then they wanted to save on costs, understandably. They went to another designer for the second book in the series. For whatever reason, they did not follow the first book that they paid good money to a professional to have designed and said that they loved. They didn't follow it. So now they have a series that doesn't go together. And here's the deal. If you work with me on your cover design, I provide everything to you. I tell you, this is the font I used for your cover, for your title. This is the font I used for your subtitle. This is the font I used for your name. All of the things are in your project guide for you to use forever and ever if you don't want to work with me again. And that's fine. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Not everyone can afford to work with me. I get it. If you choose to pay, I don't understand why you wouldn't follow up. And so the second book in the series does not look as well. It doesn't go together. And it just breaks my heart because I'm like, why did you pay me the money if you're not going to use the tools that I gave you and have the next designer follow the series? Now maybe she didn't understand the concept that everything should follow in the series. I don't know, maybe she doesn't want that in her series. But I just saw, in fact, my cousin sent me this TikTok video, and it was somebody specifically, like they were getting mad about series, and it was like a reader, and he was saying, don't do this with your book, people, like your book should match, and blah, blah, blah. Like he would not be happy about these two books because they're in the same series and they're two different sizes, right? He would not be happy. But this is a focus read, this is a workbook, so they have to be different, right? But the fact that they have the same cover design, they obviously look like they go in the series. But he was talking about like novels specifically and how even their spines, like here's the thing, when people put novels, if you're writing a collection, Laura, this is important, take notes, Laura. You're writing a collection of 5 poetry books. If someone wanted to collect all 5 and they put them on their bookshelf like this, they're going to want those 5 books to look like they belong in the same family, okay? I'll give you an example with, I don't know what happened to book number 3 of this series. For some reason, it's not up here. But these are different because of they're different types of books, right? One's a journal, one's a book. But this book and this book, both memoirs, are the same height. So they go in, well, they should be the same height if I can get my fingers right. They follow, so people could have a series of my memoirs and they'll all be the same size. They could have a series, all my journals will be the same size. So you need to think about that. The sizes and how they look on the spines together. That series would be a great, I can't see it. That series at the top would be a great series to hold side by side because they all perfectly align. And the only thing different, in fact, let me see if I can get them down. I have no idea what's behind them. I want to show you guys this specifically. Okay. I don't even know where we're going with this subject, why I mentioned this. Okay. If you see on the cover, this is the first book in the series. This little arrow is going to move around as we change. Okay. See how it moves? And so the color at the top is the color for this book. You see the gradation across? This is what they want to see. They want to see the, the names, and look at that. That's what they want to see in a series. It all looks the same so that they can tell this is a series together, okay? So make sure that you're taking that feedback, doing what matters. Oh, that's where we were going with it. Taking the feedback. On covers, it matters. You want to make sure all of this goes together. If you just take someone's advice on one cover and then you're like, yeah, I think I kind of like that idea, and then you completely go in a different direction, you're going to have a book out here that doesn't really line up, right? So you'll notice in my book collection that my books always have yellow or teal for the most part, but you can tell that they all go together in some way, shape, or form, right? Even these books that are HR books, they have nothing to do with these other books at all, completely different audience, but it all ties together. So I hope that helps you. I'm going to run through this 12 and then we're going to drop the 4 tips and we're going to call it good because we've been going way too long. So we're almost at an hour. All right. So here's your 12 people to keep in mind. This is a limited list, right? This list is probably goes way longer than these 12. And then your 3 tips are separate the emotion, ask clarifying questions, and incorporate the feedback selectively. Okay? Selectively. Any questions, comments, concerns before we wrap up? We went long today. I've enjoyed being here with you guys. I hope you've enjoyed it too. Here's the thing. I guess it makes up for the fact that we're not going to be here next week for Writing Wednesday. Next week is the 5th Wednesday of the month, and I'm taking the Wednesday off, so I will not be here. I'll put up a reminder. So I'll see you again on the 6th of November. 6th of November. We will have a new president by then. Be sure to get out and vote. But yeah, November 6th. I'll see you November 6th. Okay. Of course, if you're in my community, feel free to drop questions in the community. Email me. You know how to get a hold of me. Happy to serve and help you until then. And I look forward to hearing from you guys and working with you specifically. I hope you enjoyed today, and we will see you on November 6th. You guys have a great week. Thank you, Yvonne. You'll be older. You're having a birthday. Oh, yeah, you do have. When is your birthday? It's November, isn't it? November 5th? Is it November 5th? Is your birthday on voting day? Um, I want to say it is. I want to say you have a November birthday. All right. Until next time, you guys. Love you so much. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.